Perfect. Hail and well met, adventurers. Welcome back to Hero Sheets, a triple D experience, Dungeons, Dragons, and Disabilities. I'm your scattered host, Daria, Dawn, whatever you're gonna call me, and today's lovely guest is Vince. You want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Vince, probably known to anyone watching as Dichotomous Prime on Twitter. Um, do I go into the description bit now, or is there?
Yeah, no, do your description bit now.
Okie dokie. I am a VO nerd. I am a professional dungeon master as one of my side gigs, and you may or may not remember me as Yub Nub Merle Snub, the Goblin Wizard on Death House during Sam's mini campaign for Halloween. I also live with ADHD, depression, and number of different things, as well as kind of dealing with stuff like body dysmorphia, that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of me.
Yeah, I completely forgot. We're both like ADHD people, which is
on brand.
yeah, on brand for the disaster that today has been so far, but also like it's been a nice disaster. I had like a whole list of things, and I had it open, and I have so many tabs open. No, let's talk D&D. So you played Yubnub, who I love. He's just a little goblin wizard. And I don't know if you know this about me, Vince, but I am such a big fan of wizards. So I want to go into your character a little bit, and then we'll talk about DM stuff.
Sure,
So,
go for it.
how did you come up with this cute little explorer?
Well, it was kind of, one, I love goblins. I love playing as them. There's describing them as id incarnate almost doesn't do it justice, because but there is like a boundless enthusiasm, but it's like, if gnomes got to work in pyrotechnics, like, they'd be goblins, because they're just like, yeah, all right, cool, bombs, let's just blow it up, woo, that looks cool, and just like that level of enthusiasm. And I'm just thinking about, say, all of the very smart people whom I know who are very into the things that they're passionate about, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's a wizard. So from there, I was just kind of thinking about, because I've never been a player in a Curse of Strahd campaign at all, and I was trying to come up with a novel approach to someone coming into Barovia, aside from like, it's very spooky, and lots of fog and stuff like that. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was someone who had heard about this lore of this like mysterious, creepy demiplane and went like, yes, and yet unexplored ecosystem. I know that I could find the secrets of what is going on here and be the one to write about it. And just kind of took that and ran with it, and with the anthropologist background, and kind of Yubnub came to be, essentially.
I just love him, and I love how you came to the conclusion of like, oh, well, yeah, this is a wizard, of like just knowing so many different people who are passionate about X thing and being like, well, yeah, that's how it translates to it, because that's my favorite part of the wizard, of like, I thought magic was so cool that I went to college for who knows how long to figure out how it works, and to also combine him with like this kind of like anthropologist, like I really want to explore this world and how these things like work, and all of this is I just love it. I just love Dungeons and Dragons, guys. But
sorry,
no,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead, because I was gonna transition, but if you have things to say.
Sure. I was just going to basically cap that off with, I get so tired of the wizard archetype of just like the yes, well, I will use magic to like this kind of arrogant, like seclusive, like, leave me to my book so that I can eventually become undead. And it's like, yeah, really, edgelord? Okay, cool, novel idea, become a lich, never been done before, good luck with that. And so it's just like, nah, man, like, magic's freaking cool, like, why wouldn't you just be super exuberant and excited about it? So yeah.
I just magic is so cool, and I just think the wizard class, like you said, is kind of like unexplored because it's always just like, well, yeah, I'm just a nerd, and I'm gonna do. Uh, I'm just shaking my hands here, guys. I'm just gonna transition because I don't have enough words to convey my feelings towards wizards, but I think they're cool and they should be treated better and differently. But we did have like a whole list of questions sent in from viewers and the audience and people from our Discord and Twitter, and I want to get into some of these, starting with uh, UDM. So, how did you start DMing?
I kind of, like a lot of the ventures that I go into, kind of fell backwards into it. Um, a couple of years back, I got this absolutely wild hair to have this idea of. So there is a comedy and improv troupe in the city that I live in called the Making Box, and I learned that a bunch of them play D&D together. And I had this wild idea of like, wouldn't it be cool if we just did like a stage show essentially, but they play the party and I'm the DM, and we just we do it live, so to
Mhm.
speak. Um, and part of that was us trying to find a venue. And so I spoke with the owner of one of the board game cafes in Guelph, and he was talking about like, oh yeah, we've had someone come in and DM before, and I thought like, oh, that's really interesting. If whatever happens with this, I might be interested in doing something like that. So the show, despite literally months of planning and marketing research and all this sort of stuff, absolutely fell through. And it absolutely crushed me, I'm not gonna lie. But one of the things that came out of the debris cloud that was that attempt was that I went back to the owner of this cafe and went, so you still looking for someone to DM for Dungeons and Dragons campaigns? And he went, oh yeah, no, we absolutely are. So I bought Out of the Abyss, the D&D module, and I started running that. And kind of since then, I ran that for a little over a year, and we've been running Princes of the Apocalypse for about a year so far. And yeah, that's kind of how it got started.
That's perfect because I answered like 3 questions. Not really, but it leads me to my next question of this comes from Leather Jacket Bear from our Discord server, and they ask, "Do you use modules? If you do you just run them wholesale or do you just poach them for their maps?"
Kind of a little bit in between. My home game is entirely but with respect to when I was doing things professionally, I tend to use modules just because when it comes to being paid, I don't get paid a lot for the prep time. And so minimizing prep time is a big part of making it viable in terms of the work versus return on investment financially.
Mhm.
So I will buy a module just kind of for the layout of the structure, but I usually end up heavily modifying it, mostly due to the interests of the group and the players that I'm playing with. Um, there are some that are better for that than others. Out of the Abyss, largely, the third act kind of went way off in this other direction. But for the most part, the structure held up. Princes of the Apocalypse, I've pretty much had to Frankenstein it, just like take it apart and make it into this monstrous homunculus that luckily my group seems to enjoy quite a bit. So it kind of varies both with the group and the way that it's laid out.
Yeah, totally. I also DM, not professionally, but that's also kind of my opinion of just like taking this pre-written adventure and adjusting it to what the group wants to do and their needs. This is a personal question. Do you have a favorite module that you've run, or just like one that you just always go back to or want to go back to?
I haven't really run a whole lot, interestingly, because of the
Mm,
fact that they do tend to last for quite a long time. Because, even if we meet weekly, every GM knows it can either be, oh,
yeah.
look, they got through 3 levels worth of content in 2 hours because they have a spell that I forgot they had. Thank you, transport via plants. But you can also have a thing where you're like, okay, I have these things structured out for X number of sessions. And then they're like, I like this shopkeeper. Oh, he has a rat problem. Oh, we're really invested in this little thing. And you're like, okay, then good news is that I don't have to prep a whole lot for a while. So we'll just do that. And like, that was one of the things that the store owner asked me is, how long do you think that it's going to last? And other stores would have a specific timeline for that. And I feel very strongly about it goes until it ends. And
Yeah.
I feel very strongly about that because the last thing that I want to do is get a party to a place where they're super invested and having a really great time, and then I'm like, yeah, but we only have 2 more sessions left. So now I need to compress this down to a certain amount. So I'm like, as long as y'all are invested in coming back and like I get paid
Mhm.
each week, then I will run this as long as all of you want to keep playing it. Um, so yeah, just kind of letting it go to a natural conclusion, and wherever that pacing takes it, essentially.
Mhm. Well spoken. Or said. As Okay, do you have, like, a favorite, like, pardon my language, but, like, bullshit thing that your players just did? Like, whether it be, like, hanging out with the shopkeeper and, like, doing the like, dealing with rats, or just, like, some weird, like, problem or, like, solution to a problem that they might have created?
Let's see. The very first game that I ever ran, this was back when I was actually running Pathfinder rather than 5th edition,
Mhm.
and they were in a dungeon that I'd made and they were trying to like sneak through the dungeon and a guard saw them, but they managed to kill them before they like went and got any other guards, but the other ones noticed because of the noise, and I told them that okay, they're coming down the hallway, they haven't seen you yet. Okay, so there's a door next to it, and earlier on they'd opened a door that I hadn't planned anything for, and I'm like, it's a janitor's closet. So they're like, okay, corpse goes in the janitor's closet. I'm like, okay, there's still blood all over the floor, and they're like, okay, are there any like washcloths in the janitor's closet? Okay, yeah, no, we're gonna take those, and we're just gonna. So there's just this panicked like them cleaning up the floor and going like, no, 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 and kind of cleaning all that up at once. But my all-time favorite, and some people might have already seen me post about this on Twitter, was that they were trying to sneak through and their heavily armored fighter with like a terrible stealth bonus or
Mhm.
penalty rather, in order to avoid having them make stealth checks, the party asked me, okay, so can she lay inside of a sleeping bag, and we tie that sleeping bag to our 50-foot hempen rope, we cast grease on the underside of the sleeping bag, and we drag her across the floor like a sled. Now, can we avoid making stealth checks if we do this? And I'm just like, oh, absolutely you can. And I imposed a reasonable amount of limitations because for me, I always want to hit that sweet spot between, okay, I don't want this to be an auto win, but you came up with such a cool idea that I don't want to ruin your fun because I feel as though players deserve to be rewarded for that. So I'm like, okay, you don't know, just so you don't know the outline of this dungeon. There could be stairs. You're going to come into some problems or maybe have some things. And if you start combat, the first round, this fighter is going to have to spend her turn getting out of the sleeping bag. They agreed to that. And so I was like, that's perfect. Um, the best thing that came out of that was that between that shenaniganery right there and their use repeatedly of some dynamite they found from some dwarves, um, led to the party's name, which ended up being bedrolls and boomsticks.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that was absolutely. I'm like, no, this is what the name is, and so yeah, that's probably my favorite memory.
Oh, that's so sweet. For like every I play a lot of D&D. For like every group that I DM for or that like I'm just a part of, I feel like there's always just that one thing. One of my friends DMs, she's doing Dragon Heist for us, and we spent a lot of time trying to cheat at rat racing, um, which she was okay with, and my character has a pet rat, so we were trying to put her in the rat race, and then we saw how dangerous it was, so we were trying to, I think, poison the other rats. It was like a session and a half. I feel like we spent like the end of one session trying to set up for the rat race and the entire other session just like trying to get it to work. And I don't really remember if we won or if anything of value came out of that besides just the joy of rat racing. So I definitely recommend trying to put that in your games.
My favorite thing, and you just kind of reminded me of that, is and some GMs get frustrated with this, and to
Mm,
a certain degree, I kind of get it. If you get the impression that okay, I've built this whole thing, and like there are things going on, but the players are like, oh, I want to do this other thing, but to a certain degree, that's the name of the game, and you
mhm.
kind of have to make peace with that on a certain level. But to that within that reasonable threshold, I love when players will spend a disproportionate amount of time on something fairly arbitrary or like something small. Like for instance, my home game party got transported to the plane of Stygia in the Nine Hells. Or
Mhm.
at least two out of or three out of four of them did. The other one was like, okay, I need to figure out a way to to find out where they are and get to them. So he turned in this quest that they'd been asked to do and got like a bank note to go to the bank to like get the money to hire someone to help him.
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay, so the player got there late that day, and so I felt bad that like with the other players they'd gotten to do all this sort of stuff like you're in the icy plains of hell and all this
Mhm.
adventure and all this sort of thing. um so what I did was I'm like, okay, your adventure is going to be he goes to the bank with this banknote, and there's like a really long line, and then he gets to the front, and the clerk is essentially like, sir, so have you set up an account with us or anything like that? Okay, I'll just need to get some information from you, and just kind of this background of like the player knowing like my friends are in hell and like what's going on and everything, but this person's like, I'm sorry, if you don't have a stable address that I'm not sure to be like, listen, man, do you know what the stakes are right now? And just kind of like playing off that dichotomy of just like the greatest villain in D&D is bureaucracy, and just kind of going with that.
I
And
love
it
that.
and it
Uh,
just turned into like something really really fun. So just kind of riding that wave of like, all right, if this is what we're doing, we can make this into something fun, just kind of come at it from an unexpected angle sort of thing.
mm. I like I said, I do a lot in D&D, so I run a game for my family. We were doing Lost Mines of Foundelver, but my sister was really insistent that her character get a job, which which was an interesting take, but okay, I'll run it. And so I ended up buying the like Acquisitions Incorporated adventure and just switching their tracks and being like, "Oh, you cleared out these bandits. Come come look at this weird note that you found stuck to the door. Looks like you have a job. Go deal with that now." And so I don't know, giving them what they want in a way that was very convenient was just I don't know. I don't remember the point of me bringing that up. Oh, paperwork. I, like, made paperwork and, like, forms, like, hiring docs for them to fill out in character, which is great because one of them's a barbarian with a really low intelligence and just like n- scrawling on the paper really bigly, like in large text, just like no, because that's the character's name is just no. And I don't. There was a point to this. I promise. I just can't quite remember where it went.
I mean,
Uh,
it sounds like it was kind of, an unconventional approach to like, okay, let's,
oh
being a good improv partner essentially.
yes, that was the point of like switching things up, doing things that will make the players happy, and also, I guess, filling out paperwork. I'm gonna try to do one more question for you before we leave because this is a short day. Let's grab our from Mr. Valor on or Mr. Valor is alive on Twitter. He wants to know if you have any impressions of the alternate class features that were released recently with the Unearthed Arcana. If
That's interesting. Okay. So, That's a complicated thought
I
because
know that's a lot of questions.
I'm wondering like because I can get into it, but it might be kind of talk a little bit of talking shop. So my general impressions are essentially I can see what they were going for. A lot of what I've found for the Unearthed Arcana classes from Wizards is seems to be an attempt to hotfix things that
Mhm.
players found dissatisfactory with classes that currently exist. Um, and honestly, a lot of the things with if and of course this is with the big bracket that if you are a fan of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, but for a lot of 5th edition players, a lot of the classes are pretty solid. Some might have go like, I don't really like that 7th level feature or whatever. But on
Mhm.
the whole, they're very thematically focused and they generally have a feel that if you go, I want the feel of playing this character to be this, then there is a way for you to realize that by playing a certain class and subclass. Um, the the things that they seemed to add seemed to try and get around that by going, okay, if you don't like this feature, then you can have this feature instead. And I can kind of respect that intent from a design perspective. However, I feel as though and part of this is of course hedged by the fact that these are playtest materials. And so to judge them on the same criteria that I would a final product would be unfair. But at the same time I feel as though the ethos behind that doesn't consider the fact that players in Dungeons and Dragons and players in very strategic or combat based RPGs as a whole are interminably clever. They will absolutely find a way to go, okay, so if I add this plus this, and then, but maybe if I multi-class into this and kind of do this, then maybe I can get that. And it becomes less about D&D 5th edition's greatest strength, which in my opinion was a pivot into the direction of these are characters. These are characters that we want to enable players to tell stories first and foremost, and class and racial features and feats are the tools that players use to tell those stories. I feel as though giving players the option to swap those out for ones that feel in a different way starts taking it back to the ethos that they had with 3.5, which was designing characters in the same way that Magic the Gathering players design decks.
Mhm.
Um, my character sheet is my Magic the Gathering deck, and my features are my cards and they tell me what I can do. So it frames gameplay in a way that says my character is a collection of features first and a person with hopes and dreams and fears and anxieties second. Um it's as much of a spiel as that sounds, I hope that makes sense. It just
I
kind of sorry,
I
go
think
ahead.
I get no, I think I understand what you're saying. It goes from like from storytelling about these like this group of like ragtag adventurers to like I'm doing a Yu-Gi-Oh duel right now. You know what I mean?
Mhm. And just kind of placing it in that sort of like, okay, well, we can kind of swap this out and do that. And I know a lot of players who enjoy a lot of crunch and strategy disliked when they pivoted in that direction with fourth edition. And I can respect that to a certain degree. I'm not that player. I pivoted away from Pathfinder for a reason. Um, but it struck me as something that felt as though they didn't have a clear vision of what it was they were aiming for. We'll see what the feedback in terms of players are that comes out of that. But it kind of left me feeling kind of, it's not blowing my hair back as little hair as I have. Um, but yeah, inconclusive, but kind of giving it the skeptical hippo eyes sort of thing. Like, the hippo just kind of just looking out of the water and kind of like peering out.
Mhm. Okay, cool. So that is time for this week, or this month. Um, yeah, no, thank you, Vince, for joining us today on again Hero Sheets, a triple D uh talk show. I'm gonna keep selling that until someone else says it. Um, we will be back next month in the new year, hopefully. We're hoping to try to have another interview with Vince that goes a little longer and hopefully has video because I have a whole list of questions for him. And I just added more as we were talking because I remembered things or there were things that I wanted to revisit. Like, we're going to talk about warlocks and your opinion about them because that needs to be looked at, but also just more viewer submitted questions. But again, that will be next month in the new year, 2020. And so, Vince, if you want to plug anything, now's the great time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I Kofi and Patreon that if you enjoyed any of my takes on here or on Twitter, please by all means, every little bit helps towards kind of supporting the compendium I'm putting together, commissioning artists at rates that are just to the skills that they have. And as well, I actually got a little bit of copy from our friend Miss Twisted on Twitter. She tonight is doing on twitch.com/the cookout at 7 p.m. She is doing a talk with a lot of POC creators on raising money for charity. She's, if you aren't already following her on Twitter, she's an amazing and passionate voice for representation and justice in the Twitch community, in tabletop community, and you will only do yourself more of a service if you go over and check her out at 7. So by all means, go and support a great creator and a great cause.
Perfect. So, as I say every month, you can find me at Twitter at ethnic_Dorito. That's Dorito with an A instead of an O. We will be back next month, and I just want to say thank you to Sam, our producer, for putting this together because boy, howdy, today was rough with tech issues. And we will see you next month. Safe travels, adventurers.
Bye bye, folks. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, is the one I forgot.